Next, we're going to move to questions more focused around AP Bio and the exam. So the first one, and this is kind of a combination of a few questions we received, but as a first-year AP Bio instructor, the framework seems daunting and overwhelming. Is there an easier way or condensed version to ensure that I'm covering all the bases for my students?
I can address that, and because I can talk to you about how I do it. I teach AP Bio on a block schedule, an alternating block schedule, so I see my students about 70 days before the exam. So I only see them every other day. And here's how I look at the framework. The framework has 55 essential knowledge statements, but 148 learning objectives, if I remember correctly, something like that. So the way I chose to approach the course is look at those essential knowledge statements. The learning objectives will fall into place if you focus on those essential knowledge statements and your science practices. You know, and that's how I look at it, you know, because I choose to look at the smaller number. Why? It's manageable. It's much more manageable. And so, you know, when I have, especially first-year teachers, you know, who email me and ask me questions, how am I going to cover all this? How am I going to do all of this? I say, okay, well, look at it like this. In fact, I'm mentoring a teacher right now who's her first year. She's teaching AP Bio for the first time, and that's how I explained it to her. I said, look at the essential knowledge statements, because those LOs will fall in line underneath. You will find that if you focus on those statements, you'll make sure that the kids understand the learning objectives.
And I would also recommend that if you have your teacher's edition of this textbook before you, you've got the pacing guides, regardless of whether you're on a block schedule or the regular schedule, and it makes all the sense in the world. And those chapter outlines I just think they're fantastic, because you've got the checks, the check minuses, the check pluses, etc. Plus you've got where the math concepts are. And as Ryan was saying, much of the content is grayed out. That should be just, you know, great guideposts for us to say, okay, I don't have to teach all of that, because the curriculum framework is overwhelming, even for folks who have years and years of experience. So the book, the way it's written, the teacher's edition, will take a lot of the worry out of it. And I don't want to belabor that, but that's exactly the way I feel.
Amen.
Alrighty.
That means I agree for those of you that are unchurched.
All right, the next question we have is it better to teach the course organized by big ideas or by topic? And how do you deal with sequencing, big ideas in order, micro to macro, et cetera? And I think we covered this a little bit in the last question, but if there's anything more to add? Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to say it. I don't like the idea of covering the big ideas 1, 2, 3, 4 in order. And here's why. It makes the content very disjointed for students. And I think for me and my students, we go through the course topic by topic, but weaving the topics together with the big ideas. You know, because I know that there are people out there who teach through the textbook. You know, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and you know, I will be the first to admit that when I first started teaching AP Bio, I did that too. And about 10 years ago, I stopped doing that and started with, okay, we're going to start with evolution. Why? Because it touches everything. You know, it touches everything that exists in biology, and how could we not start with it and give kids a good foundation in it? And so, yeah, I start kind of with big idea 1, but I bring it back in every unit that I go through with my kids. You know, today we were talking about how glycolysis is, you know, something that indicates common ancestry. Why? Because every living thing does it. And we talked about the conservation of the genes that control the process, and how, you know, cytochrome C hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot and all of this. And so my kids understand, oh, hey, here I'm studying, you know, energetics, but look, evolution's coming back. And so to me, you do your students a disservice marching through big idea 1, big idea 2, big idea 3, big idea 4. But that's my personal opinion. That's, you know, so I go topic by topic.
And to add to that, not necessarily add like it's better, but different ideas. The big ideas were written for us, the adults in the room. The College Board was trying to get us to think about teaching biology in a more conceptual, a more woven, threaded way. I mean, it's integrated, right? So if you're teaching big ideas in chunks, that means that you have 4 massive units that occur in sequence. That makes no sense. That wasn't the point. I think the expectation is that we all teach our units, but that we are, as Lee just said, we have the ability to tie one idea, whether it's evolution or information transfer, together. Like Lee's talking about the relationship between bioenergetics and evolution. Today, I was teaching my transformation lab, teaching kids starting molecular genetics today. How? By dropping them right into the PGLO lab. But during that opening 20-minute introduction before we actually did the work, we talked about how an organism like an E. coli cell and a jellyfish, separated by literally billions of years of evolution, can produce the same protein because that genetic code is universal. So evolution's always in the room. And in fact, today I threaded in bioenergetics because I was talking about how when bacteria pick up new DNA, that there's a bioenergetic cost to that. Therefore, they aren't going to reproduce as fast. That will be selected against unless the environment selects for the new gene product, which would be beta-lactamase in this case. But the ability to to move between evolution, bioenergetics, interactions with organism and the environment, which is almost ecological, inside the context of a molecular genetics lab, that's what we're supposed to do. I taught haploid and prokaryote by doing this lab. I didn't teach it by giving them a bunch of vocabulary and then going into the lab. I let the vocabulary kind of spill out organically as we started thinking about what it is we were going to do. And sequencing, man, that's go to the Google and see who's doing what. Lee's got a different way of sequencing than I do. Chris Monsauer's got a different way of doing it than Mark Little. Mark Little's got a different way of doing it than Bobbie. And it always works. I think you need to, at the front end of a school year, you need to meet your kids kind of where they are and start with a unit that they have some familiarity with, and then build into the more complex ideas. Like, to be comical, if you start with oxidative phosphorylation, it's over. It's done. But if you start with ecology and primary producers and primary consumers and thinking about energy flow through an ecosystem and teaching entropy and first and second laws of thermodynamics in that context, that's common sense. When you get to the cellular level, you can tie back those ecological concepts so that the whole thing starts to weave together. But again, I see there are 47 attendees. We probably all have slightly different pacing. You have to go with what works for you and what makes sense for you.
I just want to add one more thing to this. The beauty of this textbook is that it helps you become a better questioner as a teacher. That's probably not grammatically correct. But what both Lee and Ryan were saying was we have to help the kids make the connections. And this book really does a good job of helping the teacher help the student make those connections. And if you're worried about the big ideas, at the very first of the teacher's textbook, after the scheduling, they have each of the 4 big ideas, and all of the chapters say, for instance, that you would want to hit upon, if you will, in the process of evolution, or in, big idea 2 with the, interactions and that sort of thing. So you can sort of double check yourself, go back and see if you've hit on those areas where the kids can make the connections, because ultimately that's what they're going to have to do on the exam, is be able to make the connections across the board.
And the cool thing is back that connection up with a specific example, and then be confident that their specific example actually addresses the concept that was being asked about. And I do think that this book really helps you do that, not only with making those explicit connections, but also with providing you, the teacher, with a massive amount of resources that help you, teach those specific illustrative examples, and then not only teach the example, but bring in the science practice that helps you teach that example.